2 years ago, I quit my 9-to-5 job with zero plans. I started my own business. I grew that business to $10,000 a month in just 30 days. I've grown that business to multiple six figures now. And I live in South America, Colombia to be exact. So a lot has changed over the last 2 years, and you have questions. Question number one, how did you find the courage to quit your 9-to-5 without a backup plan? So I would say about 6 months before I made the decision to quit my job, really without any plans, I went through a really powerful transformational exercise that I recommend to really everyone now, and that is writing my own obituary. I talk about this a lot, and I know it sounds morbid, but like I said, it's extremely powerful, extremely transformative. What that exercise allowed me to do is imagine my free life. Imagine what I wanted to do by the time I died. It's an aspirational exercise. It's not in this moment, what would someone say if you died? It's in 70 years, when you finally perish, what will people say about you? And I had realized in that moment that a lot of the things that I was doing in my current life at that time weren't going to add up to the life that I wanted to live, the life that I wanted people to write about. So that is what led me to think, okay, I've got to make some drastic changes in my life. And that gave me the courage to say, this 9-to-5 will never make me happy. Why don't I just quit now with zero plan instead of waiting years, developing some sort of plan, some sort of scheme, and then quitting? Because I knew I wanted to quit. It was just about timing and taking the leap. Another thing I will add is that I had a safety net. I'm talking about I had a family and I had a lot of friends who loved me. I'm very fortunate to have those people in my life. And I know that if everything had gone to shit when I quit my job without a plan, that I had a place to stay. I had a couch to sleep on. I had some sort of support from my family and friends. And that was so important to allow myself the confidence and the courage to take that leap. What were your initial steps in starting your own company? Writing the obituary was definitely the first step. That was the catalyst in me quitting my job and starting my own business. It's something I wanted to do. Second, I had somewhat of a robust network of contacts and business colleagues, associates, contacts in the area where I was living. That was instrumental in my business's pretty rapid growth at the beginning of its infancy. After reaching out to a lot of those people who I thought would need help, either building a website, running ads, running webinars, running email marketing, all that kind of stuff, I did a lot of different things in those first 6 months. I started reaching out to other people online, strangers. But working with those business contacts gave me a lot of confidence in the early days to then go after strangers. You don't need a website. You don't need an email address with an associated website. You don't need an LLC. Just start selling. That is what I recommend as the first steps in starting your own company. Don't mind all of the legal, all that kind of stuff. I will say this is not financial advice. This is not legal advice, but I wouldn't mess with that stuff until you start growing and it becomes very necessary that you have a structure around your services to protect yourself. How did you manage to hit $10,000 a month in just your first 30 days? The reason I was able to grow my company so quickly is because I realized at the very onset, Nathan Barry talks about this in his Ladders of Wealth Creation. I highly recommend reading his blog post about that if you have not. Freelance is not the path to freedom. Freelance is not the path to growth. Building a subscription model, revenue model is the path to freedom. So I learned very quickly that short-term projects were not going to satisfy me. That was what a freelancer does. What I wanted to do instead is grow a business where I can optimize my time. I can grow the business. I can scale it without having to dump hours of my time into that process. So I learned very quickly that short-term projects were not the same as long-term monthly retainers, turning those services into a scalable monthly subscription product. A very key difference that I learned really quickly in order to grow my business. What were the biggest challenges in the early days of starting my own business? I'll say two things. One, having the confidence to sell myself and my services. And two, the lack of social proof that I had to show that I could do what I was promising that I could do. I am my own biggest critic, and to start selling online was a very difficult transition to make from being an employee to running my own business, selling online is very difficult. Once I had a few clients under my belt, a lot of those business contacts that I had were easier to get than strangers online, and a lot of mistakes under my belt, don't get me wrong. Then I gained a lot more confidence to be able to go after people who I didn't know, strangers online. And the second piece of that is that I did not have any social proof, any proof of results that I could show a lot of those early clients. I didn't have testimonials, I didn't have statistics, I didn't have awards, I didn't have any certificates. I couldn't do or show any of those things. So referrals are very difficult in the early days. However, once you are able to show results, once you are able to deliver the value that you promised to deliver, that is when you get referrals. And the best type of marketing is no marketing at all, when your clients automatically refer you to other people just like them. Can you share the strategies that you use to reach 6 figures in less than a year? Sure. First, outreach is critical. The way to do outreach right is pattern interruption. That's what you need to remember when you are doing outreach online, whether it's in email, whether it's in DMs, whatever. The people who you're targeting are likely receiving hundreds of messages every day, either over DMs or email. You need to be able to stand out from that crowd. You need to be able to show that you deliver value. That means your subject lines need to stand out. Your emails need to stand out. Your gifts and images need to stand out. Your message, your video, or however you choose to deliver that message needs to stand out from the crowd. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Don't do any cookie cutter crap. Stand out from the crowd. And then second, customer service. I underrated customer service as a critical element of my service delivery. Open, honest, and consistent communication is incredibly valuable, even if your service doesn't live up to the hype or the value that you promised. However, I will say results are the most important thing in your business. If you cannot deliver results, then you cannot expect to grow your business. You cannot expect referrals from your current clients. So yeah, customer service is really important. Make sure that your clients are very happy with your service. However, if you're not delivering results, then you can kiss the whole thing goodbye. Well, hey there, just a small break in your video to remind you to subscribe to the Freedom Files YouTube channel. Go get our newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter that'll help you quit your job, start traveling around the world, and grow your business. How did you choose Colombia as your first destination outside of the US? This was actually really random. I had a friend when I was living in Indianapolis who recommended to me Medellin, Colombia. I had never been, I'd hardly heard of Medellin, but he had spent a lot of time there and recommended it especially for its greenery, its nature, and the people, which I think are the most important aspect of any destination that you want to go to. They have Midwestern values here. They're extremely kind, friendly, warm, and to me that is very important. When I walk down the street, I want people to smile at me. I want people to say hi to me. You can't get that anywhere in the world. There are only a few certain spots that you really feel the warmth of the people around you, and I think Colombia is one of those places. Also, when I left the United States in 2021, I really wanted to learn a second language. I had somewhat of a foundation, a really slight background in Spanish, and because of that, I wanted to learn Spanish first. So it made Colombia a pretty easy choice over Croatia, Thailand, some other places that I was imagining. And moving to Colombia actually had a pretty big impact on my business's growth in those early days. And that was the other piece of this question. I had no friends or no social life in Colombia when I first arrived. So that made it really easy for me to go hard into my business. Monk mode. How do you handle business operations while constantly moving between countries? My business is fully operational on the internet. So really all I need is a laptop and a stable internet connection. Over the last 2 years, I lived in 7 countries in Latin America. And I will say that once I started to stabilize and become more consistent in my routine and establish a home base, that is when I really saw business growth. It's really difficult to move every few weeks, every month, and expect to grow your business as you would if you were in one place solidly that whole time. What tools and systems do you use to manage your business remotely? Notion is at the center of my business. I'll just come out and say that. Notion is the heart, the corazón of my business, and everything revolves around Notion. Everything I do is in Notion, my calendar, my to-dos, all of my client information, where I store my files, documents, links, all that kind of stuff. That's all in Notion. However, I obviously use the Google Suite for calendars, for document storage, for email, all of that kind of stuff, but I heavily rely on Notion to supplement that. In addition to those two different tools, I will say also that systems have been incredibly important as I've grown my business. I don't want to be a freelancer. Being a freelancer to me feels like an employee. I didn't want to work hourly, as I stated earlier in this video. So systems became incredibly important as I started to outsource a lot of this work. I have a couple employees, and it was important for me to document all of the processes before I started handing off that work to them. How do you maintain work-life balance while traveling and running a business? So I'll admit that in 2022, I got really lonely. That was a lonely year for me as I traveled between 7 different countries, living with no one. I wasn't living with anyone during that time. And that took a toll on my relationships, that took a toll on my mental and emotional health, and I didn't realize it until after the fact. You'll see in this video linked here that I made 3 really big changes in my life, and those 3 changes are building an audience so that I could connect with people online a lot more than I was before, to turning those virtual relationships into IRL relationships, in real life relationships, and turning everything virtual into physical, because as much as you want to make real connections online, it's just so much better in person. So number 2 was turning those relationships into real in-person relationships. And then 3, establishing a home base. So now I bought real estate here in Medellin, Colombia, and I've settled here. It's my new home. When I'm traveling, routine is extremely important. So I've gone through my routine in the Freedom Files on my website and in these videos on the Freedom Files channel pretty extensively. However, when you're traveling, that gets upset. The important thing is to stick to that routine, get back into that routine so that you have something to fall back on. Despite all of the uncertainty that you're going to go through as you travel, as you nomad, you need somewhat of a routine to go back to and rely on. I will say also that there's a fine line between having a routine and becoming too programmed, because you want to leave some space, you want to leave some spontaneity in your life to be able to meet new people, to experience new things. That is where you really become and feel alive when travel. You need spontaneity, and too rigid of a routine breaks you from that. All right, last question. What inspired you to start the Freedom Files, and what is your mission with it? So 2 guys that I really look up to are Nathan Barry and Jay Clouse. Nathan Barry is the CEO of ConvertKit and a creator online. Jay Clouse is a serial creator, I should say. He runs a podcast, YouTube channel, newsletter, and he teaches people how to become creators online. The main thing that I have taken from their journeys and what they teach online is that sharing what you know, sharing what you have gone through can be a viable business on the internet. You can make money doing that. The purpose of starting the Freedom Files was not to make money. It was to start documenting my journey so that I could help people go through that same journey that I have gone through. So my mission with the Freedom Files is to help you realize your full potential and realize your free life through online business and location independence. So that's my journey in a nutshell. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it gives a little bit more clarity about who I am, what I have done over the last 2 years, what the Freedom Files is all about. Give a like on this video and leave a comment down below what you thought was the most revealing of these different questions and answers, and I will see you next week. What's up? It's James from the Freedom Files. And if you like the video that you just watched, you're guaranteed to like all of the other content we create on our YouTube channel and over at freedomfiles.co. If you're trying to build a life with location independence and financial freedom, I got you covered.